We have no control in today's society. Every day, we are losing our power as a people to change society in meaningful ways. We are complicit and lost, and we know collectively that we need to change. The elites have subjugated democracy not to serve us, but to serve their own destructive and selfish interests. Everywhere we see destruction and inequality contorting the world to destroy our health, mental and physical, and to also destroy our long-term hopes of survival as a species. We have no action plan, we have no methodology to make things right. If there's any hope for humanity as a whole, then it's not being represented by any major group today. Everywhere we look, we are surrounded by lies, and these lies work to keep things going the way they are. If we cannot start a unified political movement, one in which we can put aside differences in exactly which way we want to see the world evolve into, regardless of political ideology and other divisions, we are going to enter a world in which we have no control over our destiny as individuals, and the impact it will have on our ability to help each other and live happily will be crippling, especially to those who do not feel represented by the majority. It is important that we have that conversation one day to figure out how to achieve maximal happiness for everyone in the world, but today is not that day. The most important thing we can do is work to create for ourselves a sense of power which empowers us as a body of people who want to change the world. We need to have a public forum about what we want and need, and what ideals we share, and what information we cherish as valid for educating ourselves as to right courses of action. We cannot have that if we are going to depend on and rely upon money first and foremost, because money creates grounds for ulterior political motives. What we have today in chat rooms, forums, and comment sections is the most sacred form of conversation we have right now, and if we just confine it to those who already see and care about the issues we face, we will always be hampering our ability to effect change into existence if we are competing with corporate media, which exists primarily to serve powerful interest groups. It doesn't matter who you are, you deserve a voice in which ideas we are exposed to, and collectively we have a responsibility to having an educated opinion. Because if we can't do that, nothing can change. Our voices mean nothing to the political system, even if we do vote, because what is done in the political climate will always be beyond our ability to influence and create new ideas which can pave our way to the future. This is the first step to creating real democracy, a public discourse in which our ideas can be accurately represented and shared to help educate others. Sitting around and idly hoping for change is the enemy of freedom within society, and will always lead to a ruling political class which inches towards authoritarian and fascist ideals. We have enough momentum collectively and enough caring people who want to see the world change to have an active forum which represents many differing but relevant opinions. Maybe one day our goal can be consensus in all subjects, but doing so will be impossible if our methods of information dispersion do not change. This is not about any particular ideological worldview, but giving change a platform to stand on. But this can never happen in today's societal standards, because it does not serve the people who are running things behind the scenes. So many things can fail with a revolution because it is very dependent upon material success and an ability to spread the message so that it affects the public, and it can become distorted so that it no longer represents its original message. We do not have the time, money, and energy to protest every single problem that afflicts today's society, but we have demonstrated through all the conversations on the internet and all the content creators that we do have the ability to educate ourselves and refine our opinions away from what we are being made to believe by interest groups that are outside of our democracy's reach. I cannot stress enough that this is the most important thing we can create to reform society towards true equality, and that we are forever going to be held back in our growth if we cannot give our opinions the weight they deserve, and they are forever resigned to small internet subcultures. Anything else to this is secondary and bound to create division which will amount to no significant long-term change. With the internet, there is nothing stopping us from making this possible, and it can be the compass we need for social reform that we desperately need for spreading good information that is unfiltered by the monopolistic practices that exist in today's media, which strangle free speech. Exactly how this can be done can occur a number of different ways, and exactly how the system functions does not have to be figured out in perfection before it's done. The point is to make it so that any idea which maintains an interest as being relevant to society can then be brought into the public spotlight. The system must incorporate not just well-known creators, but also those who are new or not well-known, perhaps with a voting system, which allows for polls as to what can be screened for both major and up-and-coming creators separately, which can both be set up for popular viewing in a balanced capacity. Electing content can be done similarly to a petition, where anyone who gets a set amount of votes can be slotted for future public viewing, with more votes required for major known creators than that for the time slot of new creators. We can also make it so that those who are selected for interviews on major television networks can also be elected with a similar petition voting system. We can also make it so that there is a live feed similar to that function within Twitch chat, where any comment which gets a certain amount of votes will be displayed on screen with certain obvious filters in place. Maybe towards the end of a major news broadcast, there can be a section where elected content is shown. But apart from these additions to major networks which are already established, I think that it's important that there be a unique channel established which has a combination of elected content and related debates on the same subject, and reactions to that media from people who are elected as relevant to that field of subject that is being played. There can also be a rating system where everyone who's watching that channel can give a star rating, which will then be displayed when the media is finished playing. There may be a system of deferring parties which represent major opinion groups which can have their own individual elections, and can receive a certain percentage of media uptime depending on their popularity, which could also have a separate allotted amount of time reserved for unknown and obscure opinions, essentially a group for alternative parties. This way, even if a stance is unknown or particularly unpopular, it can still gain representation, with some limitations as to which things we could leave out, which society deems as particularly unhelpful. To promote collective viewership, perhaps we can require that celebrities have periodic sections where they share their reactions to the different things that were presented that day, similar to that of a late-night host's starting monologue. And we should also require that major networks are occasionally required to comment on anything they thought was interesting or impactful. There are really many ways to go about this as long as we have some kind of cross-network interaction that promotes an interactive conversation between the people, content creators on the internet, and big media networks. Maybe one day we can even hybridize the two completely to completely dissolve the distinction between elected content and the content which is established on major networks, such as a talk show where all the topics are elected beforehand. This doesn't even have to limit itself to televised media networks either. Imagine perhaps an elected body of officials who have their own live Twitch chats, and they present their own arguments and respond to arguments being posed to them. Or maybe to go directly back to the internet, SEO, or search engine optimization, can also be democratized in some way. Or we can even create a standardized web page which will display all the best elected data, information, and related media content to a particular topic. But the most important thing to keep in mind is that this cannot be a profit-driven interaction process, because we know exactly what will happen if that becomes the case. Democracy will again be subverted to favor the elites. And this is the entire point of this new internet-based infrastructure, to avoid just that in favor of an active democratic body of people. There's a tragedy, in my opinion, to expect that famous people are always going to make the best judgments, whether they are politicians, big media networks, or content creators, and that we don't need to diversify our sources of information more equally among the people. I'm not saying that we need to do away with any of these things, just that we need a formatting which encourages viewer participation and gives more power to people who want to have their voices heard in meaningful ways. This way we can kind of bring more connectivity between the people who are the Steve Jobs of the world and those who are the Steve Wozniaks of the world, because currently we really have more of the former. You may be wondering, now that the video is coming to an end, how can we actually take these ideas and make them into something in the real world? I have a few ideas, the first being that we can reach out to major creators to help promote this idea. Like Joe Rogan, who has already done a lot to promote free media by having a variety of guests on his show. We can also organize concentrated strikes where we ask major creators to give their opinion on this and make their own content promoting it. But regardless of what we do, this requires some coordination to make it happen. This video alone amounts to nothing. What are your ideas for ways we can get this idea going? If you come up with some good ones, I can try to organize some timed events where we focus on getting other creators' attention and perhaps the attention of major media networks as well if the idea gets enough traction. But it's up to us. Nothing is going to change in the world without serious effort. And with this one idea, we can make it infinitely easier to foster movements in the future, in a way that doesn't require everyone promoting this idea to share the exact same beliefs. We can make this happen.